Hello and welcome back to the lab. Today on the bench we have something on the slower side of things, another audio oscillator. This one I picked up out of the stack of test equipment that's waiting for the bench and figured we'd give this a go. The only thing I know about this thing is, well, apparently it's been to Key West and it has quite a bit of gravity in it. The unit itself is quite heavy. Other than that, I have no idea what we're getting into. There could be transistors in here. There could be tubes in here. Given the weight, I'm expecting a power transformer and some tubes. But we'll have to see when we get the covers off. It is a Baker and Williamson Model 200. Not to be confused with the HP Model 200, which was the first product from Hewlett and Packard. So I'm going to see if I can dig up some information on this thing. I don't even have any idea. Never heard of this company before, so we'll have to see what we can do and see what we can get into. Is this a sticky or a magnet? That is a magnet. All right, cool. That's good. That won't be too hard to take off. And another magnet. All right, so cover does need some cleanup, but other than that, the paint is in great shape. A little bit of rust on the screws, but not too bad. Contacts are going to need a bit of cleanup. Definitely change out these leads. Looks like we have a center tap, and then we have a 500 ohm output on this unit. 500 ohms is pretty old for an output. Multiply frequency, 1, 10, and 100. That moves okay. Oh, I wish this was feelovision. This control is amazing. It's very free, nothing's binding, and it just sweeps back and forth. This is actually, I may keep this one for myself. I don't know yet. I really like the way that's implemented. And then this is probably just a variable. Oh, that's the on switch. So on, and then output level. Doesn't feel like a wire wound, but everything is moving relatively freely. So at that point, just need to give it a good clean. Let's dive in, take the covers off, see what we're working with. Probably going to have to do some work in here. Do not want to power it up without first checking out the power supply section, things like that, especially if it's tubes. Probably going to need some service before we plug it in and turn it on. It's in very good shape. Don't want it to burn down because we did anything we weren't supposed to. Might as well bring you guys along while I pull the covers off for the first time. Screws are nice and short. If we do put this all back together, the screws are kind of rusted and everything like that, so might dress it up with some stainless hardware. We'll have to see how things go, but that is a definite possibility. Given the way it's moving, I don't think there's any screws on the back. It's already trying to fall out of the case, so I think we're going to be all set. Survey says heavier, extremely heavy. Screw on the bottom. Are we free now? We are freer, but we are not free yet. Do I need to take the feet off? I shouldn't. Need to take the feet off. Take the feet off and see what happens. I'm either going to get into this thing or taking the feet off is going to be pointless. One way or the other. Some things are going to move. I think the feet may have been changed at one point. The screws do not match. This is a much more modern hex head screw on the foot. And I do see chassis, so I believe the feet needed to come out. Yes, much freer. There we go. And we're at tubes. Okay, so we have vacuum tubes. Well, that plug won't fit, but the case, this is in immaculate shape for as old as this thing is. I do not have an age on this, but we're going to see if we can't figure that out. But look at this. This thing is fantastic for how old it is. And we have a light bulb, so odds are pretty good. We have a Wien bridge oscillator in here. Tube-based Wien bridge oscillator. So it'll be really interesting to see how this stacks up against my 200 CD. Well, looking at the bottom of it, it already doesn't stack up 100% because I have parts I have to replace. Caps have got to go. So, interesting. We have a ceramic capacitor. We're going to be doing some work on this one. Big resistors. Dogbone style resistors. They're going to be fine. This electrolytic's gone. The bulk electrolytic is probably gone. What am I getting? What do I have for rectification? Is it solid state or is it tube rectification? Tube complement is a 6X5 GT, a BS65GE for the light bulb, and 6 SN7s. Kind of odd that one's metal, the other two are glass, so I would imagine that got replaced over time at some point. One power transformer, kind of small, and this shielding is going to be for the tuning capacitor, I'm sure. There's my transformer. No diodes. Tag board has resistors on them. Either I am missing some diodes or this 6X5 is going to be my rectifier. Quasi looks, yeah, that's got a rectifier pin out on it, so I'm going to triple check that, but I think this 6X5 is my rectifier in this unit. Yep, we have called that one correctly. The 6X5 is a full bridge rectifier. Full bridge vacuum tube rectifier, but full bridge rectifier nonetheless. Okay, so there's our rectifier. So relatively a simple circuit. Tough part. Let's see what that is. That might be a humbucking coil, but we'll see. The tough part's going to be the two caps on top, I think. So we have a capacitor here and capacitor here. These guys are going to be the hard parts. Getting those swapped out for something better / workable. The good news is lines from this tag board down to the cap, which is fine. And then over here we just have a resistor, and I have to figure out where those lines go. But we have some options for those capacitors, so shouldn't be too terrible to get that fixed. Okay, I have got the 3 capacitors changed out that were really concerning me. We had a 0.5 here, which is now a 0.47 at 630 volts. We had a 0.1 here, which is now still a 0.1 at 630 volts. And we had a 60 at 120 or 130 working volts DC, which is now a 68 microfarad at 450 volts DC. So that's going to be fine and live forever. I have cleaned the controls here and here. There's only 2. And I have lubricated the main dial. It's turning very freely. In an older video, or in an older version of this, I'm assuming it's older, black front, not blue, not grayish front. There's an extra wax capacitor on this unit. We have 2 ceramics that were not in the previous circuit. The ceramics, unless they're shorted, they're going to be fine for a while. Being that they're ceramic, they're not in the oscillator section, not stable, so they would not be part of the oscillator section. I did misspeak earlier in the video. I said 3 6SN7s. One's missing right now because I was soldering on this socket. This is a 6SJ7, not a 6SN7. So that explains why 2 are glass, 1 is not. So I'm at the point where we can actually start this up and see if there's other problems. I've sanity checked these 2 bulk filters. All 4 sections behave as capacitors as they should. And I'm kind of torn. If they work, I don't know if we should replace them. If they don't work, obviously they'll get fixed. But I really like how clean the top of this looks, and I'm really torn on these bulk filters on this one. I don't know. But we're gonna bring it up very slowly on a variac. I've sanity checked the bulk filters. They're okay. They're not shorted. So we'll set this at, why not 1 kilohertz? Because everything is good. And let's see if this thing actually has some life. Okay, I have this hooked up to the variac isolation transformer and current limited supply. And we are going to bring this up very, very slowly. I want these caps to gently come into voltage again. So we're going to kick this on, just like so. And we're going to come up to about 20 volts. So we're drawing about 1.6 watts right now. So nothing terrible. Not expecting much to happen. While we're waiting, let me get some leads hooked up so we can hook up some test gear. Keep an eye on this because I'm quite curious as to how well this functions, but also what its distortion is. Actually, speaking of that, I should warm up the distortion meter so we can do that exact measurement. Okay, we're a ways into this, and everything is looking really good. We're at 60 volts on the line, and I'm starting to get some glow on the rectifier tube. So B+ should start coming in soon, and we want to make sure those caps don't get hammered too hard in the beginning, or we pull too much current through that rectifier and blow the cathodes. So that's just some of the stuff that I'm balancing as I bring this thing up very slowly. Okay, we are at full line voltage, 120 volts on the variac, and at the front side of the power transformer we're at 120 volts. So not dropping a lot through the power transformer and not dropping a lot through the current limit. So we're going to go ahead and kick the current limit out, and I'm going to move you guys up to the scope, and we're going to see what this thing's doing. Okay, I have you guys on the scope. Scope set for 100 microseconds of division and 5 volts peak to peak. Let's give this some amplitude and see if we have oscillation. That is looking, there we go. So we can drive it to distortion, but that is a substantial signal already. That's 5 volts peak to peak. Now we're into high impedance, but I'm also loading it down with the distortion meter. That's 20 volts peak to peak coming out of this thing, which is substantial. And that sine wave looks absolutely fantastic, which is also confirmed by the distortion meter. I'll move you guys over there. Well, it's not an HP, but I need to put this into perspective. The design of this unit is from 1953. So we have 0.3% THD in 1953. Or 51. Sorry. Yeah, so this oscillator's almost 70 years old? Over 70 years old. Holy cow. So it changed a little bit because I've also loaded it a little differently because I hooked up a different scope, and it has a little bit more capacitance on the output of the output transformer. I am now really impressed with this unit. So we're at point, keeping in mind, this particular audio oscillator is 70 plus years old as of the recording of this video, assuming 1951, which is what the design dates to. I haven't tuned this. I've even replaced some capacitors in there that were woefully bad, which I will show here in a little bit. It's a good thing we did not start this up with those wax capacitors in there. They were toast. But I have 0.4% THD, and if we take a look at the dial, it's off a little bit on the camera, but if I get down on it, that's dead center on the 100, and it's 10x 100, so it's 1 kilohertz. This is what our sine wave looks like. I'm using the 7603 as opposed to the Rigel because I have a frequency counter hooked up to it. That's the frequency from a GPS DO stabilized frequency counter. It's off by 7 hertz, and I haven't even aligned it, and it's 70 years old. That's incredible. So, taking this down, it's got a little bit of a noise in it. If I look down at the waveform, it's vibrating a little bit. We're also 100 hertz, so we're pretty close to some power line stuff that's running around in here, and we up the distortion. It's also probably because it's out of its case. If I put this in its case, this would probably get a lot better. But if we kick it up, it's off by 250 hertz at the top end on 10 kilohertz. Now, to give you an idea as to how far that is, because, it's off 250 hertz. See how far we have to move it to get it on frequency. That's about as good as I can get it, and that's 11 over. So that's 10 kilohertz plus 11, so pretty close. And I just noticed something. The scope that wasn't even end to end. That was just center tap to end. So end to end would have doubled that. So that's outputting about 40 volts peak to peak into high impedance. So that's got a substantial amount of signal on it. So for a 70-year-old audio oscillator, I'm pretty impressed. Doesn't promise a crazy amount and delivers on what it does. So low distortion for the times, low distortion still for today. I mean, anything sub 1 is low distortion. So let me know what you guys think. Should we call it good here? Should we dial? Should we change the filter caps? What should we end up doing? Also, on this one, should we keep it in the lab? Should we move it on? I don't know what to do with this thing. I am thoroughly impressed with the unit, though. Keeping in mind, I have done nothing except change the capacitors that we know were bad. Speaking of capacitors that we know were bad, well, that one's toast. That one's toast. This one measures okay on the peak. A little high, so it's going to show some DC leakage. ESR's marginal for this value of capacitor, so it's this one's testing marginally, and if I really hit it, tried to test it at its rated voltages and things like that, I'd expect it to not be so happy. So it's a good thing we changed that out too. So let me know in the comments below what we should do with this audio oscillator. Should we use it on the bench to test amplifiers, do some other things? I have other audio oscillators, so if this one moves on, it's not going to impede the bench. I have SG502s, 505s, things like that this would be a duplicate of. But if you guys would like to see me use some more vintage tools to do some more modern troubleshooting, we could also get into a little bit of that too. Part of that is knowing the limits of the gear and just operating it within its limits, or at least knowing when it's not indicating what you think it's indicating. A lot of this gear, like scopes and things like that, they'll trigger well beyond what their rated bandwidth is. But using them gets a little more tricky when you're using them outside of their rated specification. So yeah, hit me up in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys would like to see, and we'll see what we can make happen. Thanks for stopping by the lab and taking a look at this Barker and Williamson, not Baker. I misspoke in the beginning. Audio oscillator, model 200. I have not seen much Barker and Willimson equipment before, but this oscillator has impressed me significantly for its age and its capabilities. If you'd like some additional content and want to support the channel, check out the Patreon page. Patrons are running ahead of what's coming up to YouTube. As of the recording of this video, there's nothing behind the paywall. The support from the patrons helps me bring videos to YouTube, and their support helps more than anybody could ever know. And I'm eternally grateful for everyone that's signed up, and I love the conversations that I have with everyone there and in the comment section on YouTube, so keep everything coming. As always, drop me a line in between videos. More is always on the way, and I will see everybody in the next video. Bye for now.